Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, we're doing some spring thrift flips. For my first project, I'm going to be working on this Christmas box that I thrifted. I want to do basically sort of like an Easter hat box design. I'm first going to prime the surface using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in white. I'm going to do one coat, let it dry for a few hours, and then come in with the second coat and then let that dry for a few hours as well. The primer is going to block out the Christmas pattern underneath so that that doesn't come through my paint, and it's also going to prepare this shiny surface for my other paint layers. So I'm going to be adding that to the lid of the box, the outside of our box, and also the bottom as well. After my primer had had a few hours to dry, I took Paint Couture's Peace Mineral Paint and I'm going to give the lid and the base of the box one even coat. I'm going to be layering another paint color over the top of this, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but as you can see, this has really great coverage, and the mineral paint line also has a built-in top coat. I'm definitely going for a French country Easter sort of style box here. So Christmas boxes are perfect for this. So if you see them out while you're thrifting, I definitely recommend that you grab them, because with just a little bit of paint, you can definitely transform them into stylish home decor, a great storage option. Once my paint was completely dry, I took IOD's Trimmings 3 mold and I'm rolling up my Das air dry clay, and then I'm pressing it into the mold using my thumbs to really push that along, and then also to push out the excess. The micro rim on IOD molds definitely helps you to get a clean edge. I'm then going to flex the mold, flip it over, and as you can see, the clay is coming out pretty easily. I definitely recommend adding some cornstarch to your molds before you add the clay. It definitely makes getting it out a lot easier. I'm now going to use my Sealy's Quickset wood glue on the back of my casting there, and we're going to add it around the edge of the lid. I did have a little bit break off there, but that's okay. They do go together pretty easily. And this mold is actually designed to be a continuing pattern. They are designed to go together. So I'm going to make another 2 of this particular casting, and they will go together pretty seamlessly. I recommend adding a little bit more glue on the ends of your pieces as well, so that you're sort of gluing the 2 pieces of molds together, giving them a little bit more support there. So I'm going to continue adding it. When I got to this stage, however, you will see that I do have a bit of overlap. So once I've noticed that, I'm going to grab my palette knife and we're going to cut off some of the excess, and then I'm going to sort of reform the clay so that it's not as obvious. It's going to still look like there is a little bit of difference in the pattern, but once it's all painted, it will all come together. I let my castings dry overnight, so now we're going to focus on the base. I'm going to take Paint Couture's Buttercream chalk paint. I'm going to get some on my brush, and I'm going to go over the top of that piece paint, but you'll see I'm letting my brush skip over certain areas. We're not doing a dry brush. We definitely have a lot more paint on, as opposed to when you're doing a dry brush, you hardly have any. But as you can see, I still want there to be some of that piece showing through, almost like it's worn away over time. So I did lay down a coat in this fashion, and then I did end up going over the top and doing another light coat a second time around. When my paint was dry, I took my lid and I sat it on the box, and I'm just marking where the lid comes down so that we don't put too much detail where the lid's going to cover. So I've just put a lead pencil mark there as a guide. I'm then going to take IOD's Farm Animal stamp. I just have the rabbit design there. I'm inking it up with IOD's black permanent ink, but only part of it. I just want the rabbit head and his shoulders. I'm then going to position him on a little bit of an angle there in the center of the box. So just holding that in place. I have one hand moving around applying pressure while the other one stabilizes, and then I lift it straight up. I'll then wipe off any excess ink there with a wet wipe. Once that was done, I did then sort of flip it around a little bit, and I'm going to take JRV's Grain Sack Stripe stencil and Paint Couture's Duck Egg. I'm using a 1-inch JRV stencil brush, and then you can see I've just got one hand holding the stencil in place while I run my brush up and down the stencil design there. So you don't want to dab or swirl with this one. You want to hold your brush there and pull it up. I did get a little bit of bleed through on the end there, but that's okay. We're going to do some distressing. I then turned the box around and did the same thing on the other side of the rabbit. Once my paint was dry, I took some 220 grit sandpaper and I'm going to lightly distress our stripes there to give them a bit more of a vintage feel. If you don't have that stencil, you could probably use some masking tape to achieve this look too. Next, I'm going to take Redesign's French Laurels stamp and we're going to take that center design there. I'm going to ink that up. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to use a wet wipe to wipe back any excess. So always check that before you use your stamp. I'm going to position it over the top of the rabbit and press down. So you see I have one hand holding it in place while the other one moves and applies pressure. Definitely take your time with this. And then once I'm happy with that, I lift it straight up. Next, I'm going to take a stamp from IOD's Knob Topper stamp. Unfortunately, that's a retired design, and I'm just going to add that up in the top left corner. I'm then going to be taking a design from IOD's Antiquities stamp. I'm going to ink up part of it. I just want two of the words there, so I'm going to wipe off the excess from where I don't want it, and we're going to position that in the bottom left section there. And then I'm going to wipe back any excess that I don't want. And then I'm going to ink up another part of the stamp, again, wiping back what I don't want. And this one I'm going to position in the bottom right section. The next day I came in with Paint Couture's piece and we're going to go over the top of our IOD castings that we added, and I'm going to paint those all the way around, still being a little bit gentle. We don't want to disturb or break our castings. Once that paint is dry, I'm going to take Paint Couture's Buttercream, and just like we did with the base the previous day, I'm going to go over the top of the castings and the lid, and we're going to brush some of that buttercream on, but still allow some of that piece paint to show through so that it looks like worn away, distressed paint over time. Again, it is going to take 2 light coats of this paint using this technique to get the look that I'm after. Once my paint was completely dry, I took out a stencil that I had in my stash and Paint Couture's Pitch Black chalk paint. I am just going to offload the excess, and then we're just using the bottom section of that design there. We're leaving that top label off. I just felt like it would be a little bit crowded. You can see I'm applying it in sort of a swirling motion. Again, you do not want to have much paint on your brush when you're doing stenciling. You'll also notice I have one hand holding that stencil in place at all times. Once my paint is completely dry, I took a 220 grit sandpaper there and I'm just going to go in and do a bit of light distressing. Again, we want this to have a vintage feel, so I'm definitely going to pull back some of that paint. You can see I'm just using my hand to wipe off the dust. Make sure you don't use a wet wipe, that can reactivate the paint pigments. I'm then going to use Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze, and I'm really working it into the details of our castings around the rim there, and then I will use a wet wipe to pull back some of the excess. As I've said, I want this to look antique and old, and this glaze is definitely going to help achieve that. I don't want it too heavy, so you will notice that there will be certain areas that I wipe back more than others, and I'm going to repeat the same process for the lid and the base. Obviously, if this is a little bit too rustic for you, it's a little bit too aged, you could definitely just leave this step out. If I inspire you to try any of these wonderful Paint Couture products, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. And here's a look at our finished bunny box. I I love how this turned out. I think that the IOD stamps go beautifully with that grain sack stripe. It all just really came together. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my next project, I'm going to be giving this little watering can a makeover. Ultimately, I want it to look quite vintage. We're going to start off with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer. This is a very slick surface, so I'm going to apply 2 coats inside and out. Once my 2 coats of primer were completely dry, I took Paint Couture's Crust Texture Medium, and I'm going to take a little bit of that out, put it in a plastic container, and then I'm also going to take Paint Couture's Embossing Medium, and I'm going to take a little bit of that out as well. And then I'm also going to take Paint Couture's Pine Cone. We're just going to tint that particular product with that lovely brown, and I'm just going to stir it really well. And then I'm going to take a chip brush, and I'm going to start applying it over the top of our watering can. Ultimately, what my goal was with adding these products together and adding them to the watering can was to create quite a textured look, like this is a watering can that has been outside for a really long time. It's really got a nice crust on it. It's got rust and just all that wonderful texture, and probably also has been painted a few times as well. So that's what we're aiming to achieve, and having this mixture together, it just really did create that look for me. It definitely came together. So I'm going to continue adding that around the entire outside of our watering can, and I'll also add it a little bit on the inside as well. As I was applying this product, I went from brushing it on to doing some stippling. I just really varied how I was applying it because I found that that got me a lot of different results. So if we're doing some dabbing and stippling, that tended to make it look a little bit more like rust. After I finished applying the mixture, I let it dry for several hours, and this is how it's looking. It's looking quite crusty, which is exactly what we want. We want to give it that age and character. So I'm then going to take Paint Couture's Autumn Sage Chalk Paint. This is a lovely green, and I'm going to go over the top, and you can see I'm letting that brush skip over some of the texture, but you'll also notice that texture shines through that paint beautifully as well. This paint is pretty pigmented, so I'm only going to do 1 coat around the outside over the top of that texture because we don't want to hide it too much. On the inside, however, I did end up doing 2 coats because obviously we don't have that added texture there, and we just wanted to give it a bit of a tidier look. Once I finished applying my paint, I did take my hairdryer and I sped up that drying process a bit. This is going to help create additional texture. Next, I'm going to take Paint Couture's Pitch Black Chalk Paint. This is a lovely black, and I'm going to add that to the center of that plastic container there. I'm also going to add some water from my mister to water it down a little. Then I'm going to use my fan brush, and I'm just going to dab and speckle on some paint. Now, obviously you don't have to do this, but again, I want this to look like it's been outside for a while. Maybe they're age spots, maybe it's remnants from old paint. I just wanted to add some age, so I'm going to work my way around my watering can, adding those speckles. Once my paint was dry, I took Paint Couture's light brown sugar antiquing glaze, and I'm going to work my way around the watering can, adding it over the top of our paint and then coming in with a wet wipe and dabbing back some of that excess. And I'm loving how that glaze is grabbing all that texture we created with our crust and embossing medium mixture that we made. And again, this is just going to add that age that I absolutely love. You don't have to go this grungy. If this is too much for you, remember you can leave this step out. Once that glaze was completely dry, I did take some lavender and some Spanish moss to add to the inside. And here's our finished watering can. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It definitely has a lot of rustic charm. That crust and embossing medium mixture definitely gave it some age. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my final project, I'm going to be giving this frame a makeover. My first step is to remove the back and of course the matting and the glass. Now I really like this frame as it is, so I sprayed it with some Rust-Oleum Clear Matte Sealer, and now I'm going to come in with my light brown sugar glaze over the top to bring out those details. Obviously, if I was going to paint this another color, I would be using my Paint Couture 2-in-1 primer, but I didn't want to change this color at all. So we're just applying that glaze, and then I'm going to take a wet wipe and pull back some of the excess. I just love how adding glaze or wax brings out details that would otherwise go a little bit hidden in a more neutral tone like this. So I'm just going to continue adding that glaze, and then once I'm happy with the coverage of that and it's dry, I'm going to take my Bronze Luxe Metallic and I'm just going to get a little bit on my finger and I'm going to start going over the top of some of the details. Again, I want this to look like faded gilding, so I'm not looking for complete coverage here. If you're not a fan of bronze, Paint Couture has a lot of other metallics to choose from, so at this point you could come in with a more traditional gold or perhaps a silver or a copper. There's a lot of metallics to choose from. After I finished adding it to the ornate details, I also ran some of that product over that inner frame design there with the little raised details, and then I also added just a little bit on the outside curves. Now we need some artwork for the frame. I'm going to take AB Studios Rice Paper 4778. This one is on my website. You can also get it using my affiliate link. I'm just going to cut out the top left-hand side rabbit. Any of these really would have looked really cute in there. And then I'm going to take some of my light brown sugar antiquing glaze and I'm going to go around the edges. You can see we do have some lighter sections there. And then I'm going to use a wet wipe to sort of blend that out. This is rice paper, so it's a little bit thicker than traditional decoupage paper. So I'm able to do this without tearing it, but definitely be gentle as you're doing this. So adding this glaze is going to give it more of an antiqued and weathered look, and it's going to blend a bit better with our frame. When the glaze is dry, I'm going to position it on the back of the frame there, and then I'm going to grab the mat and position that where I want it to go. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to take the glass and position that over the top. I'll then carefully position the frame back in place. And here's our third finished project. This was a pretty quick and easy flip, but very effective. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video and that it's inspired you to start creating some Easter and spring decor for your home out of thrifted finds. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.